Well, good morning. We are so excited that you are here with us on our co-working session. This is an exciting time because this is our first time to go live with co-working, and we actually have co-working here at Red Worldwide every day, Monday through Thursday, and then on Saturdays at 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And so we have been getting requests about how do you make this more available? I can't get into Zoom, I'm not able to do it while I'm, moving around. Is there some way I can watch it later? Some place where it's going to be readily available. And so what we've done is we've decided to take our co-working sessions live. And so that doesn't mean that you won't get your questions answered because we are, on Zoom, and we actually have also the chat where you can leave questions and we can answer them later, or we can answer them right now if you are putting them in the comment section on YouTube. So this is a pretty exciting time for us. Having the ability to do this has been a goal of ours, and we'll be live next week on Instagram as well. So this is going to be great. Well, today it is Tuesday, and on Tuesdays we talk about our legacy. We deal with things in business to help us do business better on other days during the week, but we actually are focused on the protection of, what it is that we've been working with, here at Red on Tuesday. So RED is an acronym. R is for research, E is for educate, and D is for development. But we also have within the guise of our research, education, and development that we're providing the ability to launch, grow, and protect your wealth. That is our actual goal. We want to launch, grow, and protect your wealth. And part of your wealth, of course, is going to be your business, and part of your wealth is going to be your intellectual property, your innovations, iterations of those innovations. And so when we're thinking about it from that standpoint, it really is important for you to understand the vehicles that we can use. We, in a session later this week, are going to talk more about the actual business structures and, which structures are the best structures for you, depending on what type of business you have. But today we're going to really talk more about how do you preserve your family wealth? What is it that you can do to really get in there and preserve, what you have lived your life to accumulate, or what you're beginning to accumulate. So we're talking about preserving family wealth through trust on life insurance. And this is really an important thing. A while back, I wrote a white paper, and I will share that white paper with you if you will give us your information. Just put it in the chat, or send it to us in an email. You can send it to our admin at redworldwide.org, or you could also go to our website and request there, a discovery session, and I can talk to you more about it, personally. Where it says on the website, redworldwide.org, you can go down, you can actually click on the right-hand side and set an appointment, and we can, talk about this, as it relates to you personally. But when we're looking at our quest to preserve and enhance our family wealth, we have to understand that there are various financial instruments that are available and various strategies. And I am a strategist. I have an MBA. I'm also in school getting another master's degree. I have a few master's degrees now, but to add to my collection, a master's of taxation, and master of science in taxation. And what I'm learning in the estate planning portion of what we're doing is, the different types of strategies that a person would use, and the integration of using an estate trust with life insurance, stands out as a really potent combination. When you put those two things together, it just makes a lot of sense to a lot of people. And so I know that people, are thinking about, the types of life insurance that they have. I am not an insurance professional, although I have taken the insurance test and I do speak insurance code, but I'm not an insurance professional. However, I can direct you to some really good ones. But what I have learned in my studies, with regards to life insurance is that oftentimes people are not as focused on what they can do with the instrument, the insurance contract. They're focused more on the death benefit and not realizing that they could be utilizing their life insurance while they're living. They don't have to wait until they, pass away for their family members to use it. It does have a use in your lifetime. And so when we're looking at this comprehensive exploration of the different types of trusts that are out there, I want you to be thinking about combining some things and not just what it is that you are utilizing as a business structure or what it is that you're utilizing for death benefit, but how can you use everything that you have together, to create the perfect solution for using your wealth while you're alive and being able to make it available easily to your family members when you pass away. So the strategic use of trust-owned life insurance, when you understand it in the context or within the framework of how the Internal Revenue Code works, it is really a premier strategy for building wealth, preserving wealth, ensuring the continuity of your wealth, and enhancing your family's wealth across generations. Now, how does that affect your business? Patience, you are a business strategist, you are a business coach, a business advisor, a tax advisor. How does this help me, okay, with my business, because it seems as though it more or less will help me with ultimately with my legacy, but how do I put those two things together? Well, let's talk about the power of estate trust in wealth preservation, because ultimately, if you have a vehicle that you can use right now, that will assist you with your funding your business, where you don't necessarily have to go to the bank and you can become the bank. And when I say you, I'm not necessarily talking about you physically, but something that you own, like a life insurance policy that has a cash value, could provide for you a way forward in building or growing your company. And so when we think about it that way, if you have a whole life policy or an index universal life policy or some other permanent policy that has a cash value, it could provide for you another way to access cash. And most of you guys are very familiar with who's on co-working right now. You're very familiar with my concept about money. And I talk about the fact that money is a language and that it is the way that we are able to have an expression of value. And so when we look at money from that perspective, understanding that, being able to take cash, okay, and convert it from one expression of value to another expression of value provides you with sometimes money in hidden places or cash in hidden places. Give you an example. When you take, cash money, $500, we'll just give it a signed value, $500, and you go to the grocery store, you're not able to buy $5,000 worth of groceries with $500. Even if you had a bunch of coupons, you couldn't do it. Okay, why? Because that in that form, that $500 in the cash form has a growth potential, only that's assigned to the value that it is. It has the capacity of 500 units. That's what it is. But when you convert that 500 to another expression of value, then of course you unlock its potential. You can take $500 and put it down on a piece of property and unlock equity inside of the property that you might not would have had. So now you've converted this taking this money and giving you access, right, to more expressions or a larger expression of value, even though it may have been $500 that you put down on a house. Unfortunately, when you're looking at it over here, you might only see the 500, but when you're looking at it on the real estate side, and I've done it, I've taken $500 and put it down on a house and purchased a property that actually netted me, the equity. Okay. And then when I sold it, it netted me the profit, in the sale, so I walked into that particular house with, I don't know, 30,000 or so dollars worth of equity. And when I sold the house, I got all of my money out of it. Okay. So understanding how you can view this really does give you a broader spectrum. And when we're talking about taking money and putting it into a life insurance policy, this is a real, and one of these days, real soon we'll have somebody on who is a life insurance agent, broker, who can talk to us, about how this works in the form of, or how it possibly could work for you. But today, I really just want to have you just kind of open your mind just a little bit, to understand that there are some other vehicles that we can utilize. So as I was saying, taking $500 and putting it in a policy, unlocks the potential because of the cash value that will grow in that policy. The potential is there for you to have a larger expression of value by taking a smaller amount of cash and converting it or translating it to another expression of value. Some of the other things that we might have seen is people who have large, companies. They didn't start large. They may have taken a few dollars, went down and got them an LLC, started doing business. I know we have somebody on the line right now today with us in co-working who's doing exactly that. She took a few dollars and started her company, and and is having some amazing results. She's beginning to flesh out some things and seeing where she can have that expression of value turn into a much larger expression through her commercial activities. We've got another person on the line who had an idea and turned that idea into something because of, just in the forefront of her mind, she was like, I believe I can do this, and I can do this in the metaverse. And she did. She turned something that would not have even seemed like commerce to someone, into a business that now is thriving. And so when we're looking at it from that perspective, taking cash and putting it into ourselves so that we can gain more knowledge, and then turning that into a business or into an intellectual property, it does, unlock for us the potential of our dollars. So with that being said, let's talk a little bit more about trust. Okay, so I want you to think about a trust as a contract, okay? Or you can also think about it literally as a piece of paper with instructions, okay? I mean, let's go down all the way, drill all the way down there. It is literally a document that you could put together with someone else or by yourself. When I'm not talking about the person that actually creates the physical document. I'm talking about the people who are the parties, that are working inside of the document. You can take this particular piece of paper and leave instructions, for your family members and others, so that they will be able to make sure that you have the context that you want to have when you leave the earth realm, okay, for your kids and your family members. What you want them to understand about the wealth that you've put together, the information, how you want it to be assigned to, who you want to manage it. All of that is in this document, in this trust document. So when we're looking at the concept of a trust, it's literally, instructions. That's what it is. Now, can you make instructions in there that are very targeted? Well, it depends on the type of trust, that it is. But for the most part, yes, because what matters in a trust is what that document says, what the powers are of the trustee, what it is that you're leaving or making available to the beneficiaries, and who the person is that's actually creating the document, for it to be used. And so let's kind of talk about this whole concept. There are two types of trust. There's a grantor trust and a non-grantor trust, right? When it comes to the actual characteristics of the trust. But per the IRS, there are two types or categories of trust. There's the irrevocable and the revocable. And so when we're looking today, we're going to be talking, more or less about these from that perspective. So let's kind of look at what a revocable trust is. And a revocable trust is literally a trust that is established and managed by the persons who created it. Generally they're the ones who started off, and they are the ones who make it available for the beneficiaries. And so in a revocable trust, it's all you. It operates off of your social security number. Sometimes people will add an EIN number, but for the most part, nothing changes there. It's a grantor trust. It's you. You created it, and you can, if you choose to, become the trustee for that trust, and you can be also the beneficiary. You can hold all three of those positions, or you can assign it to other beneficiaries, which could be your children, or someone else in your circle. Your family members can be beneficiaries of that revocable trust. And so when we're thinking about a revocable trust, I like to use this illustration of it being, um, you're taking money from one pocket and putting it in another pocket on your pants, okay? And the pocket that you're taking it from may not have a zipper, but the pocket that you're putting it in has a zipper. It's protecting it from probate. What is probate? Probate is that process that the United States government has, that's managed by every state, okay? Because every state has their own probate court, to actually dispose of assets properly, and to ensure that family members, who are rightfully heirs, gain access to whatever it is that is being left, and that bills are paid appropriately for people who, have become deceased. And so with that case, and understanding that if you don't leave instructions in a revocable living trust, okay, of sorts, then you will be going through the probate process, because if there's no instructions, then the government, of course, has a process for taking care of assets that were not that instructions were not left for. But if you leave instructions in a living trust, okay, with all of the correct things done and the right people put in the right places, you have access to a document that is very powerful, and people can know what it is that you expected to have happen, and who you wanted to have manage that process, and to whom you wanted those assets to go. And so literally, that is a very powerful document, because it helps you avoid probate, helps your family members not have to go through the costly public process, that can sometimes take a long time, and this is what we use to ensure that you at least secure your legacy. Now, the irrevocable trust is another category, however. It's the not you, okay? It operates off of your an EIN number that has been assigned to it, and it is a way of separating your assets from you personally, or having someone else separate assets from themselves, and they assign a trustee, okay, and it's for the benefit of their beneficiaries, which might be their children, their spouse, or other family members. And so when you're seeing it this way, you understand that, oh, okay, the revocable side is me. I can set it up, I can manage it, and it can be for the benefit of my children or myself or whomever. And the irrevocable side is the not me, okay? It could be, if I set it up, I'm probably not going to be the person who's the trustee, because again, the whole purpose was asset protection, and it also protects you from creditors, and it protects you from probate. So, you have some other parts in there for the non-grantor trust, which is the irrevocable side, that helps you to make sure that you are separated enough to reduce tax, to, there's lots of benefits, but, to have the protections in there from any kind of predators, editors, or creditors. And and it has those characteristics that are distinct, to assist you if that is the kind of protection you're looking for. And so, because of the specific powers that are in that non-grantor trust, it is a distinct tax entity, and it has its own unique tax implications. Literally, the difference between the grantor and the non-grantor trust, the irrevocable and the revocable, is primarily lies in control, and the tax implications associated with those types of trusts. So the grantor trust is where the grantor, or person who establishes the trust, retains certain powers. And these powers can include the ability to revoke the trust. substitute assets in the trust, borrow from the trust without providing collateral or security, distribute the trust's income to themselves or to a spouse or to someone else that they may need to have it go to, remove beneficiaries from the trust, because the grantor retains the power. Okay. And because they retain the power, they have the control, of these things, but it is not a separate tax entity. Okay. It is not separate for the tax return. And so, understand that if you have a grantor trust, it's all you still. It's all going on your tax return. And when you see it that way, even though it allows the trust assets to grow and it allows the grantor to benefit, the beneficiaries without burdening them to pay income tax, within that particular the revocable trust, it is still them. On the other hand, the non-grantor trust is the type of trust where the grantor does not retain any controls or powers over the trust. It means that the grantor cannot revoke or change the terms of the trust in any way, and they can't make changes to the trust beneficiaries either. But it's a separate tax entity. It's required to pay its own taxes and any income received and, into it, if it's income, they'd have to file a tax return on that income. Now, it also can receive donations, and depending on how that's done, then that will be separate from the income. And based on that, then it's not taxable if those donations come in the proper way. But it's generally used for asset protection purposes. It allows the grantor to protect their assets from creditors, and it allows them to get the actual assets to their heirs in a way that is very powerful over time. Okay, so let's talk about some, tax implications. How do we look at, these trusts? Okay, and especially in the context of life insurance, it's really governed by specific internal revenue codes, and the grantor's control or lack of control over the trust is a pivotal situation when it comes to tax liability. So let's look at that really carefully for the next few minutes, because I want you to kind of get this in your mind. So in a grantor trust, the grantor, or the person who establishes the trust, retains certain powers over the trust. These powers can include the ability to revoke the trust, substitute assets, but we also need to understand that there is no separate tax return for the grantor trust. However, if the grantor ceases to be deemed owner of any portion of the trust, the grantor will be considered to have made a taxable gift of all assets attributable to such a position. And so, on the other hand, when the trust doesn't qualify as a grantor trust for income tax purposes, in other words, it's a non-grantor trust, an irrevocable trust, it's considered, in this particular case, a separate tax entity. And so it's required to pay income tax, and it receives, the ability, though, to have this influence on tax treatment, okay, that's asserted to it, not for the grantor's sake, okay, but for the trust's sake. In other words, it's actually allowed to grow and to pass the income to the beneficiaries. And where this control is not there for the grantor, it allows for certain tax benefits, and even though it is responsible for its own tax obligations, there are certain things that are really beneficial to a person who is utilizing that trust. So when we're looking at estate planning, according to the IRS Internal Revenue Code Section 101A, it generally is a provision there that the proceeds of a life insurance policy that's paid for, by reason of the insured's death, they're not included in the gross income of a trust for income tax purposes. This means that the death benefit of the policy from that life insurance policy that might be in the trust is typically received income tax free to the beneficiaries, whether the policy is owned by an individual, the grantor trust, or a non-grantor trust. So even if the policy was owned by an individual and transferred into the trust, the beneficiaries are going to get the proceeds tax free. If it was owned by the trust itself, the trust established this policy for the persons who are associated with the trust, and the funds are to go to the beneficiaries, they're going tax free, and it really needs to be something that you understand, that depending on how the policy is structured and where the policy is put, then the tax treatment, it's really dictated by the Internal Revenue Code. And so we're looking at that 101A, Section 101A, as the guiding authority for, how this trust can take possession of the and pass through and distribute, the death benefit right now. Okay, that's what we're talking about. And I want you to really look at the fact that when you put life insurance inside of a trust, okay, there's a myriad of benefits. One of the things that you have to understand is it's like a financial safety net. And this is really important because it provides liquidity, it ensures tax efficiency, and it aids in the seamless transfer of wealth, and so tax treatment can really change if the life of the insurance policy is owned by a trust. And I mean, it's kind of phenomenal when you look at it that if it's a grantor trust, then the grantor is treated as the owner, okay, of the true assets or the trust assets. And for income tax purposes, according to Section 671 through 677, the grantor is taxed on the trust income, but if it's a non-grantor trust, okay, and then we're looking at Section 101A, to look at, and also IRC Section 2042, we can see, where the trust is the owner of the policy, and of course, then the tax benefits there are that the proceeds are coming out tax-free. So this is something that we want to pay attention to because it really gives us the ability to, know what to do in this situation. So specific circumstances that could cause, the trust-owned life insurance policy, as far as the non-grantor trust, to be able to be used where they could borrow against them and create tax-free income within the trust, are primarily going to be your Internal Revenue Code Section 101A2, known as the transfer for value rule, and Internal Revenue Code Section 72E. And I'm reading these codes because some people have asked, where can I find it in the code? Where can I find it in the code? So the rule in 101A2 says that if a life insurance policy or any interest within is transferred for valuable consideration, the death benefit in excess of the premiums or consideration paid by a transferee is subject to federal income taxation. This rule can apply in the following circumstances. If a loan is paid off, as a part of an exchange, or if the transfer of policy is subject to a loan, okay, then in that particular case, you could end up with taxable income. But if, okay, the borrower is the trust and they borrow against the policy, and the policy has these loan proceeds inside of the trust, then they can be used tax-free. So in this particular case, the tax treatment of a trust-owned life insurance policy under the Internal Revenue Code can vary depending on whether the trust is a grantor trust or a non-grantor trust. If it's a non-grantor trust, okay, then we know that we can actually, because it's the not you, okay, utilize those funds inside of the policy, and it's not considered to be a taxable event, okay? And so paying attention to these internal revenue codes, the 101A2, 101A, and Section 72E, those are going to be really important because the benefits are there. You can use it for wealth building, okay? Internal Revenue Code 101A, this is the last one I'm going to cover, and then we're going to open for question and answer. But Internal Revenue Code 101A1 says that if the proceeds of the life insurance policy is paid by death or of the insured, they're excluded from gross income of the beneficiary because there is that general rule basically states that, the value of that policy can be, transferred tax-free because it's not a grant or trust. So, when the insured dies, they can leave that income available and the estate is going to be able to have access to those funds tax-free if it's left to an estate or if it's left to the beneficiaries, it's tax-free. Okay. And so that's how that works. But if an existing life insurance policy is transferred into a trust, then it must be in there for 3 years. So that's the last thing I need to tell you about this because, it has to be the insured must live for at least 3 years after the transfer, or the policy will be included in the insured's estate for estate tax purposes. So, to give you an example, if somebody passed away within 3 years of transferring their policy into their family trust or some other type of trust, then they're not meeting the 3-year rule, and that's in Internal Revenue Code Section 2035. That if you transfer this policy, you got to live for 3 years in order for that to be not in your state. So the sooner the better when you're thinking about transferring policies, because you want it to be tax-free to the beneficiaries and you want the money to go to the beneficiaries and not technically be a part of your estate. So you need to really make sure that those things happen. All right. So for wealth preservation, let's wrap this up. Okay. Trust-owned life insurance ensures that the death benefit proceeds are not only free from income tax, but when structured correctly, they can be exempt from estate taxes. Okay. This dual benefit gives you that larger portion of the family's wealth so that you can have that for generations, and you can use it, as we talked about, like a family bank or a reserve strategy for the family. The other thing is that you have to make sure the 3-year rule applies. If the if it's a transfer into the trust, then it has to be there for 3 years, before the person passes away, in order for it to be considered the transfer to be considered not a part of the estate of the person that transferred it. However, if the trust purchases a brand new life insurance policy, then it skips over that whole rule. The 3-year rule doesn't apply because it was purchased by the trust from the very beginning. And one of the other things is that, when we're looking at the incidence of ownership of the policy, such as the power to change beneficiaries or borrow against the policy, you have to realize that that's not something that can happen in a non-grantor trust. Okay. It has to happen beforehand. It's not something you can change around, after you move the policy. Okay. And so, because that's kind of violating a particular rule that we talked about earlier. But in conclusion, the ownership of the life insurance policy, by the non-grantor irrevocable trust can provide significant tax advantages, and it could require, careful planning to make sure that you're adhering to potential tax pitfalls. So in another time, we'll talk about how do we make the premiums, something that the trust can pay for as a trust expense. That's something that we'll come back with maybe next Tuesday, to kind of talk about that, or following Tuesday, so that we can make sure that you guys understand, how you could do this. So you could use the irrevocable life insurance trust. Okay. When you transfer the policy into the trust, it becomes irrevocable life insurance trust. If it's a irrevocable trust, you could use that, to have proceeds to utilize to take care of family members inside of the trust. You could use it for crisis management. If you got an emergency, you can borrow against that policy and use it for emergency, management in the family, control and flexibility, whether it's, uh, a situation where the policy was transferred into the trust or whether it was already something that the trust set up itself, while it's irrevocable, it can be something that becomes a very flexible tool that's used to take care of the people who are the beneficiaries, and then you can, get into a situation where you become this architect, I call that, tailor the design of your use of these policies and making sure that you're able to have it match with what your ultimate goal is for your family's wealth. Well, that's what I can share today about this, and I want to open up for any questions. Does anybody have a question about, what something that you're thinking about with regards to trust on life insurance or anything with regards to, the family trust itself? If you have a question about that, I'll take it now. Let me see if there's anything in the chat. Okay, no. Okay. Well, you know what? Let me answer this question because I had someone that asked it from me before. When you're thinking about setting up a family trust, okay, what could be some of the considerations that you might would make? And this is kind of outside of the life insurance portion, but just in general, for taking care of the beneficiaries, what could be some of the considerations that you want to take in when it comes to, the structure of it? And so one of the things I'll say to you is that the family trust is a very, very expansive and flexible tool for managing family wealth and for taking care of family members. The trust itself can set up other trusts. And so a lot of people, when they're looking at this, they're like, oh, I want to make sure I can take care of my parents, or I want to make sure I can take care of my grandparents, or, how can I do that? And I have, seen it done and worked, as a strategist with others to structure for a family, a very comprehensive tool for taking care of the entire family. So from the family trust, we were able to set up special needs trust for people who needed those trusts. And we'll talk about what that is in a later session. But, being able to have the trust, establish another trust to take care of a family member who might be mentally incapacitated or physically incapacitated, and they may need the ability to have funds placed in there to take care of them that will not affect their Social Security or other types of income that they may be getting from other places. That's really powerful because having that trust, in place for them, and it doesn't, affect their income is really key. Another thing that you might consider when you're looking at these options that what a family trust could do, it could also set up supplemental care trusts. So if you have family members that need supplemental care, that may mean a quality of life enhancement, being able to go on a vacation, or for that matter, have certain things in your life upgraded, so that you can have a livable condition, that you might not be able to provide if somebody gave you the cash, because it could reduce your Social Security. You're receiving the cash. And so being in a position where family members could weigh in to make sure that the quality of life is there, that you have air conditioning in your house or some of these other things that you need to have, them giving you the money could reduce your benefits, but them taking care of it, the family taking care of it through the trust, could enhance your life and not reduce your benefits. So those are really important and key things that you could talk to your estate planner about, or you can contact us, talk to us about it, because we do work with people to help them establish their documents and put things together in a way that's tailored for their needs. Something else that could be done is you could actually have an endowment from your family trust, put together, and structured to take care of some specific, event, that the family might be wanting to do for a particular family member. So those types of things are available inside of the trust. The trust could also buy property, and that property could be available for family members to live in, and so those are, really key things when you're thinking about it, that, someone who may not be able to afford to buy property themselves, but their family trust has properties that they own and they could actually live in them, and maybe they could pay rent to the trust, which would be considered income. okay? But it would be different than them having to go out and find a place. If the family had the ability to accumulate properties and set up and set themselves up in such a way that family members could have access to those properties rent-free or to pay rent, it could be a very, very powerful tool to use in a family. So, I'm just saying that these are structures that we've talked about. Something else that I've been asked, okay, with regards to the family trust. And when we've been having these discussions, can a family trust, run a business? And so I have to tell you that literally inside of the trust document is going to be the powers of that trust. But one of the things that an estate trust cannot do is run a business. It can own a business, but not run a business because of the way it's structured and the types of laws that are associated with those trusts. Generally speaking, to run a business, there's certain types of commercial activities that are there, and it would trigger income in the trust that, and other types of things that, are not available to it commercially. However, a family trust could start a business trust for business purposes. And a business trust is a commercial trust, and it can run a company. It has everything intact for the state laws, in most states that will allow it to be a commercial entity. So whereas the family trust is not a commercial entity, it is an estate trust. A business trust could be a way forward for someone who's considering a structure that they want to operate in trust, okay? So that's another thing. Can a family trust hold assets? Absolutely, it can. It is set up so that it can hold assets, manage those assets for the sake of the beneficiaries and the trust duration or continuity, and it can distribute those assets to the beneficiaries at such time that it is, necessary for it to do so. So, when you're looking at a family trust, it literally is a vehicle that can be used to manage the wealth of the family, and that's its whole purpose. The fusion of your estate trust with life insurance, when you implement it with a deep understanding of the Internal Revenue Code, it really does emerge as a strategy for building and preserving your family's wealth. And it's not just about the wealth creation, it's about ensuring that the wealth stands the test of time, benefiting not just the current generation, but many generations forward. So when you're looking at that, you want to make sure that you are understanding, its purpose. And then always, always, always get connected to a professional so that you have the ability to know that what you're doing is not just legal, but that you're in compliance tax-wise, and that it's set up properly so that it will stand the test of time. We, promote utilizing our precision tax advisory services that we have at Precision Tax Advisors. And you can get in touch with us at advisors@precisiontaxadvisors.com. And in terms of learning more about these structures, you can learn that from Red Worldwide. We have, classes where we teach this, and, we have lots of books and things that you can get, some free ebooks and all kinds of wonderful things to learn more, about, marrying your commercial activities, which are your business activities, with your estate planning so that you actually have a vehicle to do some things. And with that said, we're going to, shut this down because it's 8 o'clock, but I am so excited that you've joined us today. And we'll be here tomorrow back with co-working, talking about ideation and intellectual properties, developing out your own products, and how you can productize your services and protect them with, the proper patents and, trademarks. So we'll talk about that tomorrow. And we look forward to you joining us and being a part of that session. And so with that, we're signing off today.